Hey artists, to practice with soft sculpture, we'll be making a little emoji pillow. So you're all familiar with the simple yellow circle head emojis, and that's what we're going for. Now I realize there are more complicated emojis that are different colors that have objects coming off of the yellow circle, but I would like us to focus on the ones contained on the yellow circle. If you desperately want to make something that is different from one of these kind of faces, talk to me about what it would take in order to do that. So here is my finished emoji pillow that we will be producing for this project. You can change the expression on the face, but I would like you to stick with the basic circle outline in yellow. Any other colors would be a special request. There are tracer shapes for different facial expressions. If you don't want to use one of my tracer shapes, you will have to make up your own shapes. So going with something highly unusual would be more work for you, but if that's what makes you happy, you can absolutely do it once you understand how this project works. So let me show you how this project works. I have a variety of tracers. You might get them already cut out from the pink background paper, or you might have to cut them out yourself, in which case, if you cut them out, leave the line cut around the outside of that line so you have them. Notice that for the head shapes, you'll have to trace two, a front and a back. For the different eye shapes, you decide if you want two of the same or two different. For the mouths, typically there is one mouth. So you choose which one you want to trace and cut from there. When you are ready, you'll get a yellow piece of felt that is approximately this size. And you will need from your table bin some chalk for tracing and a pair of scissors. You will have to share those because they are especially sharp scissors, which make them easier to work with when we're working with felt. And then you will need your shapes. So the reason that we trace on felt with chalk is that it is removable. So sure, you could probably sit there with a pen and mark this out, but felt is better because you could always wipe it off and it doesn't ruin the actual felt once you've marked on it. So to trace on anything, frankly, but especially on felt, you want to make sure to leave the largest continuous spaces possible. So I need to get two head shapes out of this one piece of felt. I will not be placing it in the middle because then it will not work to get two. I need to start in the corner as close as possible to the corner. And then to trace with the chalk, you'll have to sort of rub it back and forth to get it to come off on that felt. So I'm not sure if you can see it because it is light, but I can see it in the real world that it's leaving behind a line on my felt. And now that I have two, see that outline? See that outline? I'm going to go ahead and use my nice sharp scissors to cut just along that line so that I just cut that felt off. If you remember, the chalk went just outside the line. And so I want to make sure that things don't grow significantly larger when I trace. I can check it against this template and they should be about the same size. Very good. But you should never try to hold the paper against the felt and just cut around it because one, you'll end up cutting the tracers that other people are using. And two, when you make a mistake, there's no going back. But with the chalk, you could always rub it off and start over if you make a mistake. So once I have two, one will be the front, one will be the back. It doesn't matter which one is the front or the back at this point because they're identical. I need my facial features. So I have decided I'm going to go with a winky smile. And these need to be a different color of felt. So I went to the scrap tub, which is where you should get all your small pieces from. And I found some black. And I am going to cut these 3 shapes out of this black piece of felt. Once again, I will not be tracing them in the very center of the felt. I will be tracing them in the corner so that I leave a large chunk for somebody else to use. Now, if you struggle to hold these things down while you trace, and that's common, you do have on your table or in your bins some pins. Pins are not for stabbing directly down like this, because that doesn't do anything. But instead, if I was struggling to get this shape traced out, you can poke in from the back side. You're going to lift up and poke back on through so that the pin lays flat. With it pinned flat, you will be able to hold it in place while you trace around it. Now, clearly, because this is such a tiny piece, this pin just gets in the way. But on something larger, it would actually be helpful if I could not hold it myself. Now that I have it all traced out, I'm going to go ahead and cut those 3 shapes out, cutting right on the chalk. All right, my pieces are cut out. I have my smile, I have my regular eye, and I have my winky eye. I can decide on my placement of how I want that to look. And then these need to get sewn onto the front circle before I can sew the front circle to the back circle. In order to do that, I will need to, one, make sure they don't move. So the good news is once you have them placed, this felt kind of sticks to itself. But all 3 of them probably aren't going to tolerate that while I'm sewing. So once you have your placement decided, you can focus on one at a time. You'll need to choose your thread, much like we did for our practice. You can see my thread hanger here is very low on black thread. So you get what you get and you don't throw a fit, but there is a black one available. I'm going to pull from one of these horizontal loops in order to get my thread off. And then I'm going to go ahead and thread my needle. So to do that, I take one end of this that is not frayed. I put the thread in the eye of the needle. I pull it through so that the thread tail is about twice as long as the needle itself. I make a nice big capital D. And then I poke my needle into the thread there, right up through the center of it. Slide it through, minus the twisting. Pull that down onto the long tail, and then pull the long tail to cinch that slip knot up against the base of my needle. Then I need to make sure that this side has 2 fish knots. So wrap it, make a fish, tail in the fishy's head, pull it through one time, repeat, wrap it around, make a fish, tail inside fishy's head, pull it through. Oops, they didn't land on top of each other, so I need to repeat and try to get both in the same spot. Here we go. And now I can go ahead and use a running stitch starting at the back of the eye to go around the outside edge of this shape and securely sew this eye where I want it to be on the face of my emoji. Cue the fast forward. When I reach the end of this shape, it's sewn on, I'm happy with it, my thread's still sticking out the back. I could tie a balloon knot, cut my thread, tie new fish knots, and start again. Or I could realize that we'll only ever see the front of this. And I can place my other piece to sew with the same color thread and simply make a connection across the back. So I can go ahead and poke in, pulling a thread across the back side, knowing that on the front side, it's not going to be visible. And then I can continue sewing another running stitch around the outside of this shape to add on my next feature. Again, cue the fast forward. So again, I've reached the end of a shape and I could flip it, tie a balloon knot, cut the thread, tie two new fish knots, and start over again. Or I could simply place my next feature that's going to use the same color thread, that being the important part, and I can jump across on the backside to connect through and sew on the next feature. Don't pull it too tight. So notice when I pull tight, oh, disaster. But instead, keep it loose until you have a stitch or two so that things get tacked in place. And we'll fast forward until I finish again. All right, I have everything that I want sewn onto the front of my emoji. And I suggest, even if you plan on using this same color of thread, that you go ahead and tie your balloon knot to finish off the face. So slide under a close by stitch, leave a bubble or a balloon, circle to the back, slide your needle through it and pull it tight. And two is always better than one, just in case. So repeat before you clip your thread. Don't ever clip your thread if you haven't tied knots. Then you can go ahead and snip this off, not too close to the knot. Now I have my front piece and my back piece. The last thing I'll need to do is pin them together. Well, the last thing I need to do is sew them together and then stuff them. You will not try to stuff this and then sew around the outside edge. Instead, what you should do is sew 3/4 around the outside. So say this is 12 o'clock, sew all the way to 9 o'clock, stuff in the remaining hole, and then close the seam up. Let me show you what that would look like. I'm going to stick with my black thread because I don't want to waste it, and I just don't really particularly mind. And instead of you watching me sew, we'll just check back in once the outside edge is sewn. All right, so I have sewn from 12 o'clock all the way around to 9 o'clock. I tried to make my stitches nice and even and very small, which is very important because you don't want places where stuffing will come out. I have some stuffing ready to go, everybody's favorite thing. You really don't need a lot because there's not a lot of space inside of this thing. When I reached my stopping point, by the way, you can see that I just left my thread and needle attached. There's no reason to cut it off. You're just going to go ahead and put as much stuffing as you feel that you need inside of there. I know that stuffing is exciting. Everybody wants to have 10,000 pounds of it, but there's really no point. It just needs to make your thing fluffy. So my little emoji here is as fluffy as it's reasonably going to get. I could keep putting stuffing in there, but it wouldn't actually do anything. So I've got it stuffed. I'm happy with how it looks. Some people struggle to now close this up because that's a big opening. That is another reason that you have pins. So you can use a pin to go across that opening and hold it for you while you do your stitches. So you would line up the edges the way you want them to be, poke in to the other side, and then back up so that it lays flat along your emoji. Remember, you're not just poking it in like a pin on a bulletin board. So now I can use that to go ahead and finish up my stitches all the way around. And we'll check back in when I'm ready to tie my knot. All right, I have reached the end. I can pull my pin out. I no longer need that to hold things together. My little emoji pillow is complete, but I can't just snip this without tying a knot first. So just like on your practice, you're going to slide under a close by stitch, leave a bubble or a balloon, come at it from the back side, pop it with your needle, and then pull it tight. And 2 is always better than 1 so that it does not fall apart. So pop it, pull it tight, and then now you can use your scissors to cut that thread off, and that emoji is complete.